All right, hey everybody. Thanks so much for tuning in to the WTCF podcast. It's Charlie here hanging out at the house, and I wanted to cover last week's intention, and maybe this is something that helps you. So, last week, my focus was we can be so eager to change our lives, yet we are too timid to do something life changing. And what I thought about a lot of that is that change is really, really hard and difficult, but yet we find ourselves in these predicaments where life isn't really going our way sometimes. Some things aren't great, or some things are just making us unhappy, or some changes we want to go ahead and make aren't happening. So we want to go ahead and change our lives, and yet, given an opportunity, we really won't change all that much. We'll kind of poo-poo it or kind of push it off to the side, saying, "No, that's not something that I'm willing to go ahead and do." I believe there's a meme out there of, trying to get what you want, and then it's like doing the hard work associated to it, and everyone is behind line A, and there's no one heading to line B. Is like doing what's needed to be done to get the work done. So it can be a really, really difficult thing for a lot of people. And what I want to use in this short amount of time here is to kind of talk through some of the other things of, how do you go ahead and start to change that mind state into being a little bit more like courageous. So overall, like we're all looking for like our own happiness and trying to get that done, but we are the owners of that. So we actually are the ones that kind of pick and choose the things that make us happy. So if we recognize things are making us really unhappy or life isn't going as we see fit, that first it's on our perspective, how we're looking at things. Um, Again, there's another image out there where it looks like someone's about to drown and their face is like just out of the water and they're screaming and crying. And then it pans back and the water is just deep enough. If they stood up, it suddenly wouldn't be an issue anymore. So sometimes we can make these little like mountains into molehills and kind of mess ourselves up on that one. But again, it can be really scary to go ahead and change, what environment that we're in and what we're working towards. So what I want you to go ahead and start to kind of think of a little bit more is, yeah, you do get the choice of, how you feel and how you're going to react to certain things. In the article that I wrote yesterday, it was along the lines of like, I could be really upset that it's like snowy or rainy out there. There's not much I can do to go ahead and change the weather, but I can think of the other good things that are kind of coming from it. So when it rains, all the other plants and wildlife have a better chance to get and maintain water so they can live. They're alive. They're trying to live their own lives. And again, things like snow, it is part of the seasonal stuff. Like things have to change over. Not much we can do about it, but it kind of will instill the idea that we can start anew after that's said and done. Secondly, what I wanted to address is that we just really get caught up in the same routine and kind of just do the same stuff. And even myself, I fall victim to that one where my schedule has just gotten so just rigorous where I wake up and it's Monday and these are the Monday activities. I go through this and then I go to bed. And then on Tuesday, these are the Tuesday activities. I go through all them and I go to bed. But I'm not really allowing myself to create much more change in those environments unless I'm actively out there looking for it. So sometimes to mix things up a little bit, to kind of change some of the direction of what we're working on, especially if it's stuff that's not making us really ecstatic about, going through our day. So I wanted to kind of think about those two because again, it could be really scary, but then we can get really comfortable in our routine. So we want to go ahead and start to introduce a bit more discomfort. So the first step is to kind of envision the life that you want to have and how does that person act and behave. So I come back to this all the time. If I want to be perceived as a smart person, I must behave as a smart person does based on my interpretation. So my interpretation continues to say, are you trying to educate and read? Are you trying to write about stuff? Are you trying to educate others? Are you like, what are you doing that makes somebody else eventually say this of you? Like if someone wants to say that they're a great artist, but they've never picked up a pen, or they've never painted anything, or they never made music, or never performed anything art, it becomes really difficult to say that you're an artist. So giving yourself that opportunity and kind of envisioning what do you think that life starts to look like? What are the behaviors of that person? And start to draw and envision that life as you would go ahead and start to live in. And then as that starts to get understood and you call these things out, again, the mountain can seem really, really high on some of those ones. Like, hey, I want to be a world renowned artist. That's a big step. People think they can just leap into all of this, and a lot of the people that we look at now are as these like these up and comers, or like these flashes in the pan, or these people who suddenly pop up on the scene, and then you're like, oh well, they just got started. A lot of them didn't. A lot of them have put in years upon years of work honing their craft to get to this spot. And we're just seeing them now. So know that there's going to be a bunch of like trials and tribulations as you work your way through it, and know that you have to kind of build on smaller stuff. So if you wanted to be a world-class artist, what is your art? How are you practicing your art? How are you prioritizing your art? What are you making non-negotiable about your art? What are you willing to say I'm wrong about and then go learn more about in your art? Or whatever that may be. But give yourself an opportunity to break down those things into very simplistic, straightforward, executable pieces, right? And it could just be as simple as, if you want to be a writer, guarantee to yourself that you will write one sentence a day that'll push your story forward. That could be it. Even if the sentence is garbage, you can still be a writer. Who said you had to be a good one? But again, by continuing on that practice, eventually that practice will turn into a little bit better. It'll start to improve, and it'll start to improve, and it'll improve, and it'll improve, and it'll start to build up on itself. So give yourself an opportunity to break it down to something very, very simplistic that you can create a small action on it every single day. So here's some ways you can think about it. If you put in 12 minutes a day, um, you can get a lot of stuff done. If you put in 45 minutes a day, you're going to get a lot more stuff done. If you put in 1 hour a day, just dedicate 1 hour of your time to the craft that you want to get good in, that is only 4% of your day. So in 24 hours, 1 hour is only 4%. So thinking with like mortgages and loans and the interest rates that are out there, by being up at 6, 7, 8, and some people getting loans at 10, 11, 12, 4%, just 4% of your day dedicated to your craft will help you improve. The third one is to embrace the challenges and failures that come along the way. And start to involve yourself in a growth mindset. Like, don't just look at these things as like, hey, this is a setback and I failed and I'll never be able to accomplish anything. But look at it as like, hey, this was a learning opportunity. I got a little bit better. I learned that I can do this a little bit better than I thought, and maybe this other thing. And that's perfectly fine. That is the normal piece of the projections, or the normal piece of the trajectory of improving. So it's not always going to be in this like straight line up, or this 45-degree where we keep looking and goes, oh, we're going to get great. It has these dips and valleys, and eventually it'll start moving its way up. A lot of times those end up being a little bit more exponential as well. So you have these like bigger dips to start, and then you'll have these bigger gains later on by challenging yourself every single time. Then the next one is identify and challenge the belief that's holding you back. And a lot of times it's the stuff within ourselves that kind of stops us from kind of seeing some of the best things that we're capable of. So for example, in the article I wrote about, a lot of people will start their diet on a Monday. And with it being December, I think a lot of people are going to look at January 1st as the day I'm going to start a brand new life. And no one says you have to wait that long. It's Wednesday right now. You can absolutely change your life right now today by taking a small step, and then kind of just start to challenge the things that you're already working on, or the things that you want to start to move towards. So for me, I actually like to think that my week starts on Saturday. So Saturday is my day one. That is the day I like to set my intention for the week. And then on Sunday, I post about it. So I give myself a full day to really process it. So I start my week on the weekend. I don't start on a Monday. So I get 2 days of just being really excited about not really working. And then the work week starts. It kind of helps me process that a little bit more. And then I set up my schedule, because I do get the nice luxury of working remotely. So by the time it comes to Wednesday, I get to work from home. So I get to kind of make those choices. And then I got granted some really good ones by being able to do some hybrid work and doing remote work. Not every job is going to allow us to do that. But to kind of start to identify some of the things that are going to make it a little bit easier for us to process and kind of live that life. For 5 is to find stuff outside of your comfort zone. What happens to a lot of us, and what was happening to me for a very long time, is I would basically go to work, go home, drink, watch TV, and go to bed. That was life for a very long time. And I recognized that that kind of stuff is going to kill me. Because there wasn't any real growth in any of those moments. It was just mindless comfort and luxury, and kind of, helping myself with coping mechanisms that were trying to help me, but they really weren't. Now, all that stuff should start to change over. The only time I really get to sit down and really watch TV is when I actually do give myself a chance to relax. For a lot of people who know me, I don't really sit still all that well. So now I mainly just have the TV on when I'm ready to go to bed. Um, it's mainly around that time. I do watch a fair amount of like YouTube, but I always consider myself like at least involved in that process of thinking how that works, or I'm trying to get something educational, or I'm just trying to learn something. And very rarely do I, or I should say, rarer that I would actually go into it for the pure enjoyment of just watching something. I make sure that I go ahead and enjoy it. I enjoy the stuff I enjoy, and then I get right back into, well, what can I go ahead and learn next? And what I've started to really find comfort in is being uncomfortable. If I feel like if I'm comfortable for too long, it actually starts to get a little bit uneasy for me. Where it's like, okay, let's go ahead and challenge something a little bit different. Let's see what we can learn from this one. And I get it. For myself, I am not at my corporate job for the rest of this year, so I took PTO for the rest of the year. And now with my schedule being all thrown off, I'm granting myself a ton of opportunity to again give myself some recovery and some rest time to sit around and be a lazy bum for a little bit, but then recognize, okay, there's so many other things that I can go ahead and accomplish. This might be my really good window to move forward with some of those other things and really challenge myself to do more uncomfortable things, because then I can be comfortable with more stuff as I go through my life. So I don't have to go and turn into one of those old folks that's mad about everything. One of the most popular lines that my dad says now as a grumpy old man is, "I don't really care for it." The number of times that he'll just go ahead and say, "I don't really care for it." It's like, hey, I got this brand new thing, and I thought it was really really cool. I wanted to share this with you. I don't really care for it. Hey, you know what? I found this like awesome recipe for like macaroni and cheese. I'm making stuff up here, and he's like, "It's okay. I don't really care for it." I don't want to get old like that. I want to be able to find enjoyment and find ways to bring myself up and be really uncomfortable with a lot so I can go ahead and get a better understanding of like, hey, I wanted to share this with you. Well, that's wonderful. Like, thank you so much for sharing this with me. I'm appreciative that you'd want to do this for me, right? Instead of, I don't really care for it. It's a very, very different way to treat people. Um, the next one is actually find someone else to confide in that you trust. So with the We the Collective fitness community in Forest Park, again, we're getting new members all the time, and it's wonderful. And today I stuck around after, because again, I didn't have to go into the office today, so I hung around and I was helping Katie set up for her class. And she started to refer to her class and then say, hey, we're going to do this, we're going to X, Y, Z, and then we're going to have family time. And this wasn't an ask on my side at all. She referred to it as family time. And I immediately was like drawn into that one where it's like, okay, well, everyone's going to come back together. They're going to do something fun as a group. And honestly, the reason it stood out to me so much is because this morning, instead of running my regular circuit class, on the last round, I'm like, guys, we're so close to Christmas. I'm just super thankful because a year ago at this time, we were just trying to open up. So our first year is going to be on the 27th, the 1 year anniversary. So I'm super thankful that we made it a full year. And I wanted to go ahead and celebrate. And I thanked everybody that was there saying, like, you have no idea how much this means to me. Because like a year ago, it would be like me and maybe one other person. And now I have a room full of people that I get to go ahead and work with. And it was something really, really special to me. So when I recognized it when Katie was doing it later on, it kind of drew me in a little bit more. So having a community that you can confide in, that you can work with, that has some similar goals or working towards similar stuff. And I actually use some time today to remind them. It's like sometimes we forget that everyone around us has a full life that they're going through right now. So it's not just the fact that you see them in the studio working away at this. This is just a small segment of their existence. They are so much more. So like again, if you're working on stuff, ask people about things. See, because eventually you will find other individuals who will help you on that path. Case in point, having some problems with some of the plants over at the building. I was like, man, I'm just not educated enough. And I didn't have the time and resources to go study and understand all these things when it came down to plants. And Elsa basically stood up and is like, I'm good with this. And then she went through, pruned all the plants, set like, and then set me up on a nice schedule that I can then go ahead and take care of these plants and do even better with them. So I had no concept that she had that kind of background. I had no idea that she can do that kind of work. And again, I became so thankful for the fact that somebody around me knew something that I was struggling in, and then was like, "Oh yeah, I can absolutely help." Just because being open and honest and admitting that sometimes we don't know could be a really good sign of courage in getting out of our comfort zone, right? Asking or talking to people could be incredibly tough, and I know that from personal experience, as I've grown up as an introvert for a really long time. A lot of people would talk to me and think otherwise. I'm a liar. I very much am an introvert, but I get so much joy and energy by watching other people like find victories and like get their wins and feel really proud of themselves. Like I feel really good for that. Like I like that feeling of people driving themselves forward because that's who I want to surround myself with because that's what I want to do as well. And then lastly on this list, acknowledge and celebrate the small achievements along the way. So I get it. It could be really, really hard to get started, and then breaking down the big task into something that's really manageable. But every time you recognize you've taken a step forward, that is a huge ton of progress for yourself, for your development as a person, for you and who you wish to become. It is a huge change to be able to overcome something really, really difficult. So my example in this one, I didn't write about it because I'm thinking about it a little bit off the cuff. But like I was a smoker for a very long time, and people now look at me. It's like, how? What do you mean you were? I smoked for 10 years, and I've shared stuff like that on this podcast. But not everyone listens to this, and I don't care if anyone actually does. But like, it was such a big change for me, and every once in a while, I like to sit kind of quietly and think about that, and saying like, look how far I've come since that person, and I still have flaws and I still have mistakes and I'm still going to make mistakes. But I recognize like who that person like was is no longer around. And the person that's like growing out of that one is much more in line with the person that I wish to be. Right? Not perfect, just a little bit more improved. So hopefully you can take some of these notes and help yourself through it and just start to recognize, these little things that you can do for yourself. So again, start to think and envision what you want your life to look like. What does a perfect day look like? What do you want to spend your time on? What are the things that are like non-negotiable? Who do you wish to become? Then again, break the things down into easy, digestible pieces. You do not have to conquer everything all at once. Honestly, brick by brick will still build a house. And start to embrace the challenges. So when things start to break and fall apart, that it's just part of the challenge itself. You should have ups and downs. If you're constantly winning all of the time, eventually it's not that much fun. Again, I'd start to identify what is holding you back. Because again, as you keep learning, you'll start to recognize and grow what are the missteps that you're consistently making. Then recognize it's normal to be outside of your comfort zone and get comfortable with that, to move a little bit further, to be a little bit more resilient. Then share that information around friends and other confidants that will help you and want to grow with you. Right. And if you feel that there aren't people like that around, come to the studio. Right. They basically said if you can't find people, start a group. Start reaching out to people, and it could be really, really nerve-wracking and scary. So if you like love Dungeons and Dragons and you want to go ahead and have a Dungeons and Dragons thing, start to post and write about it a little bit more. Find other groups to get involved in. Whatever you can to go ahead and take a little step forward in the things that you enjoy will probably lead to a better life for you. And then lastly, celebrate when you win. There are so many days and so many people who want to just be naysayers and push you down and say, like, hey, if I'm miserable, you should be miserable too. There's a story in the beginning of this book that I'm reading now called I Don't Want to Talk About It. And it brings up a really horrendous story where these two kids are about to drown. This one kid's about to drown, and someone jumps in, and the other person just panics and just tries to drag the other person down too. So whenever we even find ourselves emotionally in that predicament where we feel like we're drowning or we're feeling really overwhelmed, that we can drag people down with us. And I don't even think we intend to do it. We just really want to be able to, help uplift and build people back up. And we might just be dragging some people down. So again, celebrate the stuff, share it with other individuals, continue to be okay with failing, break it down into small steps, and just start to watch for the life that you want. And on that note, good luck.